Planes lifted off. Cannons roared. Troops invaded. In 100 hours of chaos, thousands died. Tens of thousands lost their homes. The reason? A football match. Not a metaphor, not an exaggeration. In 1969, two Central American nations, El Salvador and Honduras, literally went to war after a World Cup qualifier. And if you think football is just a game, brace yourself. This time, the ball exploded like a real grenade. Welcome to Cool Past, where history isn't just a list of dates, but a series of ridiculous, fascinating, and surprisingly human stories. In 1969, El Salvador and Honduras entered the Central American World Cup qualifiers. Both teams were desperate for a spot, but something else was simmering beneath the surface. National pride, social unrest, and a powder keg labeled migration, land, and hatred. At the first leg, on June 8, 1969, in Tegucigalpa, Honduras won 1-0. But the score wasn't what people remembered most. It was what happened before and after the match. The night before the game, El Salvador's team couldn't sleep. Their hotel was surrounded by Honduran fans, throwing rocks and causing chaos all night. They banged pots, blew whistles, revved engines. It was like a mock battle. Result? Salvadoran players played like drenched chickens. But it didn't stop there. After Honduras won, a young Salvadoran female fan, unable to bear the humiliation, committed suicide. El Salvador's newspapers published photos of her coffin draped in the national flag. She became a symbol of national honor trampled. And so, tensions flared, boiling hot. At the second leg on June 15, 1969, in San Salvador, El Salvador. This was no longer a football field. It was a stage for revenge. The Honduran team arrived in San Salvador and was welcomed like wartime enemies. Their hotel had electricity and water cut off, phones destroyed. Salvadoran fans roared all night. The Honduran team described the experience as a night in hell.
No!
During the match, El Salvador won decisively 3-0. But in the stands, Honduran fans were beaten and chased. Some had to hide in locker rooms until midnight, needing military escorts to return home. Meanwhile, Salvadoran media called the victory revenge, a slap to the invader. You see, in some places, football is the king of sports. In others, it's a 90-minute war with a referee. At the playoff match on June 27, 1969 in Mexico City, neutral ground, both sides had won one match. Tensions were stretched to the limit, so Mexico, a third country, had to host the decisive playoff. There, El Salvador won 3-2 after extra time. And on that very day, El Salvador's government announced severing diplomatic relations with Honduras. Not the next day, not a week later, the same day as the match. 3 weeks later, planes took off, tanks rolled in. War officially began. And you might be thinking, wait, did they really go to war over a football match? And well, not exactly. The match was the spark, but the explosives had been packed for decades. In the 1960s, El Salvador was only the size of Massachusetts, but had the highest population density in Latin America. People multiplied rapidly, yet farmland was owned by a wealthy minority. Result? The poor had no land to live on, no way out. Tens of thousands of Salvadorans migrated to Honduras, where land was vast, population sparse, and the government didn't stop anyone. Honduras wasn't a paradise, but it was 5 times larger than El Salvador, with fewer people. So Salvadorans flooded in, buying land, working, having children. One day, Hondurans looked around and realized they were becoming a minority in their own land. Honduran politicians, already weak, began using the blame the immigrants tactic to gain votes. The outcome? Nationalist movements emerged. New land laws were enacted confiscating land from Salvadorans. Thousands of Salvadorans were expelled, treated as burdens, even if they lived there for decades. In this historical context, with a sky full of resentment, the two countries met in World Cup qualifiers. Wasn't that incendiary? Absolutely. Morning of July 14th, no warnings, no press conferences, no countdown. El Salvador bombed Honduran airports and military targets. Honduran Air Force was surprised but not helpless. Within an hour, they retaliated with fighter jets, attacking El Salvador's territory. On the ground, Salvadoran troops surged across 2 fronts, east and west, invading Honduras with light tanks and infantry. They captured several small towns, some with little resistance as Honduran forces hadn't been deployed yet. Both sides then went on radio, TV, newspapers, launching massive propaganda. We've been insulted. National honor is being trampled. We must teach them a lesson. As for civilians, many didn't understand what was happening. They only knew that planes roared in the morning, and by afternoon, people were dead. Some were still watching football, unaware that war had begun. The situation spiraled out of control. The international community was utterly shocked. By the 3rd day, the Organization of American States, OAS, intervened. You guys have fought enough. Ceasefire now. Sign a peace treaty. Disband. El Salvador responded, we'll withdraw if Honduras commits to protecting Salvadorans living there. Sounds righteous, but Honduras replied with silence. So El Salvador continued its offensive until the afternoon of July 18th, when the final ceasefire took effect. In just 4 days, approximately 3,000 people died. Over 15,000 were injured. 300,000 Salvadorans living in Honduras had to flee or were expelled. And the result? No one won. No one qualified for the World Cup. Only pain and a chapter of history. Unbelievable, but true. After 100 hours of fighting, El Salvador withdrew under international pressure. The two countries shook hands, merely for show. A ceasefire agreement was signed, but true peace never achieved. The border remained tense for years. Diplomatic relations were frozen for nearly a decade, and the root causes, social injustice, migration, land issues, remained unchanged. After the war, over 300,000 Salvadorans were expelled or fled back home. Many had no homes, no land, no possessions, and especially no hope. A large portion of the impoverished population, already marginalized, returned to a homeland that couldn't welcome them. El Salvador's economy, already fragile, bore an enormous burden. Unemployment, poverty, and social violence erupted. The war ended, but the crisis had just begun. This war was a contributing factor to the formation of notorious gangs in El Salvador. NMS 13, the infamous gang, originated here. From a seemingly spur-of-the-moment war came decades of prolonged instability. Truly, after the football match, they kicked away the nation's fate. Football was just an excuse, a perfect one, because it's easy to rally, easy to provoke, easy to make people believe they're fighting for national honor, when in reality, they were dragged into a war they didn't understand. More than 50 years have passed since the football war, but the question remains, have we progressed in resolving conflicts? Or sometimes, just one goal conceded, one comment online, one flag raised, is enough to set society ablaze, simply because emotions were hurt. So the next time someone says, "It's just a game," remember, sometimes a game can start a war, or at least was set the match to a pile of history waiting to burn. At Cool Past, we uncover real stories that sound unreal, tales that shape the world in ways no one expected. Subscribe for more strange but true moments in history, because the past isn't dead, it's just waiting to be told right.